All right, let's take a look at your section on tooth development and eruption sequence. We're going to see about 6 questions here on this section. We've got some general rules. Remember that in general, teeth erupt in pairs, that girls' teeth erupt before boys' teeth, that mandibular teeth erupt before maxillary teeth, with one exception, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that the teeth of skinny kids erupt before the teeth of fat kids. Just think about there being more tissue there that they've got to work their way through, and it takes longer to do that. You can expect to see 2 questions on the eruption of the primary teeth. One of the rules of thumb is the rule of 4. I'm going to show you a great tool on the whiteboard session here in a little bit about how you can use that on your test to draw it out and have it there as a tool to use to figure out test questions. In that same whiteboard session, we're going to talk about mixed dentition. You're going to see a couple questions just on eruption sequence of the teeth and which teeth are present at certain ages. I'm going to give you some tools to use during your test when we get there. As we take a look at these next sections, I'm going to highlight some points on a couple charts in your book. They're both packed full of information, and I know they can be pretty dense. I'm going to draw some things out that we've seen on old tests. So let's look together right now. On the eruption of permanent teeth, you're guaranteed to have a question specifically on this. Remember that mandibular teeth generally erupt to the lingual, and maxillary teeth generally erupt to the buccal. Another thing that they would like to trip you up with on this is the word succedaneous. They'll ask about what's the first succedaneous tooth to erupt into the mouth. So remember that while the first molar is the first permanent tooth to come in, it's not a succedaneous tooth. The mandibular central is the first succedaneous tooth to erupt, not that molar. Don't get tripped up by that, because you will see it on the test. Take a look at the chart in your book about primary teeth. I'm going to highlight 3 main points here on the primary one and 6 to 7 in the permanent one that are takeaways from old test questions. Let's look at that diagram. Look here in your chart under calcification beginning. All 20 primary teeth have started to calcify by 4 to 6 months in utero. So I want you to draw a line all the way down that column and write 4 to 6 months, because all primary teeth have started by 4 to 6 months. The next column over, I want you to draw a line all the way down to the bottom of that. That column indicates calcification being complete, and the calcification is complete of all primary teeth by age 12 months. So write that at the bottom. Under the column that says root complete, note that for primary teeth, the root is completely formed 1 year after eruption. So write that at the bottom of that column. Those are the 3 main takeaways for this diagram. Let's take a look at the one for permanent teeth. Check this out on the chart. Another thing we continue to see on old tests is that at birth, both of the first molars have begun to calcify, and calcification is complete by age 3. So circle at birth and age 3 on both the maxillary and mandibular first molars. We've also seen in old questions they want you to know that all succedaneous teeth have begun to calcify by 2.5 years. Remember that term succedaneous? That eliminates all the molars. By age 3, all but the third molars have begun to calcify. Note that by age 1, the canines have begun to calcify. Remember that during all calcification, the incisal ridge or incisal edge calcifies first. Another point I want to highlight is the maxillary canine is usually the last succedaneous tooth to erupt by age 12. Look at the column on the right. Know that root completion in permanent teeth is usually completed about 2 to 3 years after eruption. Remember, it only took a year in primary teeth. Let me give you some tools to help you summarize what we've just gone through in the chart. I'm going to talk specifically about eruption sequence of both primary and permanent dentition. I want to give you tools here that you can take with you, that you can physically draw out, so you don't have to memorize this. Once you have them drawn out, when you get to the test, you can utilize those to answer questions. I think this is really going to help you. Let's start out with the diagram that's going to help you nail these primary teeth eruption sequences. Follow along with me drawing this in the margin of your textbook. We're going to be quick and dirty here. We're drawing boxes for incisors, triangles for canines, and that's a molar. Same thing on the mandible. There's a canine and 2 molars. Got an arch to go with it. Let's start assigning numbers to these. We know that The centrals erupt at 6 and about 7.5 months. We also know that the laterals erupt at 9 and 10 months. The canines erupt at 16 and 17 months. The first molars at 13 and 14 months. And the second molars at 24 and 23 months. Looking at this chart, we can easily apply our rule of 4. The rule of 4 starts at 7 months. It says that at 7 months, there will be 4 teeth in the mouth. Every 7 months thereafter, you're going to gain 4 more teeth. Note that the first molars erupt before the canines. So here we have 4 teeth. At this point we have 8 teeth. Now we have 12 teeth. Now we have 16 teeth, and we end with 20 teeth by the age of 2. You can use that to figure out what teeth are present at any age given on the test. I've got one more diagram that's going to help you with the eruption sequence that's going to help you visualize this even further. The mandibular central incisor is the first to erupt. If we start there, we go up, over, down, across, down, across, down, over, and up. So if you want to draw that diagram separately, it looks like this. Hopefully that can help you remember that eruption sequence. It helps you remember the eruption sequence of the incisors. It also helps you remember that the maxillary first primary molar erupts before the mandibular, and that they both come in before the canines. Drawing this diagram eliminates a lot of the memorization here. If you can visualize this, you're good to go. I want you to add one more thing to this diagram. Start at the incisors and draw a line that loops like this. This is another way to remember that those first molars come in before the canines. All right, now let's do the same thing for the permanent dentition. This is going to be another great tool to help you figure out questions when you get to your test. Let's draw the same type of diagram. We're going to do blocks for incisors, triangles for the canine. We'll make our premolars have a single pointed cusp. We'll throw in 3 molars, and we'll do the same thing for the mandible. Pointy canine, single cusp on the premolars, and 3 molars. And we've got an arch form. I'm going to assign numbers quickly to this. I want you to write them down and then come back and practice this so you can know these numbers and get them in and then use it as a tool. Starting on the mandible, our central comes in at 6 to 7 years old, the lateral at 7 to 8, the canine at 9 to 10, the first premolar at 10 to 12, the second premolar at 11 to 12. Here's that first permanent tooth to come in, the first molar at 6 to 7, our second molar at 11 to 13, and the wisdom tooth, the third molar, at 17 to 21. On the maxillary, starting at the central incisor, it erupts at age 7 to 8, the lateral at 8 to 9, the canine at 11 to 12, the first premolar at 10 to 11, the second premolar at 11 to 12, that first molar again at 6 to 7, the second molar at 12 to 13, and the wisdom tooth at 17 to 21. That wisdom tooth, by the way, is the last tooth to begin calcification, and it begins calcification at 8 to 10 years of age. Let's draw some arrows to this. On the mandible, the first permanent tooth to erupt is that first molar. So let's start at that first molar. An eruption begins there, goes around, and then it comes straight down the line. On the maxilla, we also begin at the first molar. After the incisors erupt, our premolar and canines go out of order like this, with that second premolar and first premolar erupting before the canine. Combining these two diagrams, you should be able to figure out any mixed dentition question on the test. So practice drawing these out, practice assigning numbers to the point you can get there and do it quickly, and then put that out of your mind and use it as a tool for when those questions come up. Let's take a look at how we can apply this to some past test questions.